Good evening, and welcome to the Kelly and Carrie Show. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Carrie.
And today we're going to be having a book discussion. Today's book, Life of Pi by Yann Martel.
Anyone who has read Life of Pi has been left with the question, which is the true story? This novel helps people discover who they are as readers as they join along with Pi in his adventures of a lifetime.
In the novel Life of Pi, Yann Martel includes multiple indications that Pi and Richard Parker are actually the same person. This is indicated by their strange relationship, Pi's madness, and the human-animal relations. The peculiar relationship between Richard Parker and Pi is made very clear and is used as a clue that Richard Parker is not actually a tiger who's been cast away at sea with Pi.
Richard Parker is really the name that Pi gave the person he turned into while he was cast away at sea. Pi misses the person he used to be, as he says.
Richard Parker has stayed with me. I've never forgotten him. Dare I say I miss him? I do. I miss him.
In India, Pi was a joyful, inquisitive, and kind person who loved everything about life. At sea, survival became a priority, which forced Pi to turn into a different person, a person who was fearless, savage, and cunning. I believe Pi gave himself a different name so that the things he did while he was at sea would not be associated with who he truly is. For example, Pi was a vegetarian and he had to eat meat while he was at sea. As a vegetarian, eating meat defies morals and it is not something one would want associated with oneself. By assuming a different name, it was as though everything Pi did while at sea never happened when he returns to his old name.
Richard Parker was never to be seen again because he was never on the lifeboat.
Joseph states that the fact that Richard Parker flees into the Mexican forest suggests that, upon being rescued, Pi has rejected his inner savagery in order to return to human society. He's afraid of this side of himself, just as he would be of a real ferocious tiger. When Richard Parker leaves and enters the forest, it signifies Pi's savage side leaving him. Now that Pi has arrived on land and will be rescued, he no longer needs this side of him. This shows how the Richard Parker on the lifeboat was not actually a tiger. It was Pi's savage side that displayed the characteristics of a tiger. This side of Pi has become a part of him, which is what makes it so difficult for him to watch it leave so abruptly. Humans hurt when people they love go away. For Pi, this was a similar situation. It was like watching a part of him move on.
Everything Pi and Richard Parker did was always done together. It was when Richard Parker started growling, Pi says.
I had to tame him. It was at that moment that I realized this necessity. It was not a question of him or me, but of him and me. We were, literally and figuratively, in the same boat. We would live or we would die. Together.
Richard Parker signifies Pi's savage side. This quotation demonstrates that if one side of Pi went down, the other side would never be able to survive on its own. Not only does this reflect Pi's reliability on this savageness, it also shows its necessity to ensure his survival. The only way Pi could accept the fact that he had to use savagery to survive was if he pretended that the savagery was actually a tiger and not him. Pi was too kind of a person to think that he could be as fearless, aggressive, and wild as a tiger.
Throughout this novel, there are many signs that Richard Parker was not actually on the lifeboat with him, but that he was on the other side of Pi.
Moving on to the second proof of this argument, Pi's madness is a strong indicator that Richard Parker was not actually on the lifeboat. It was all a figment of Pi's imagination.
Eventually, Pi admits that he has gone mad, and when someone is mad, they do not think straight. When Pi starts hearing a voice, he says,
I concluded that I had gone mad, sad, but true. Misery loves company, and madness calls it forth.
Pi says this because he thought Richard Parker was talking to him. This definitely proves that he has gone mad because tigers do not talk. At this point, Pi has gone blind and he is on the verge of death. Considering his time at sea, it is reasonable that by now madness would have set in. The fact that he has gone mad means that he does not have a stable mind, so this is a sign that Richard Parker was not on the lifeboat with him.
Pi's only intention is to survive, so he does not realize the fragility of his mental state.
Mishra states that he doesn't reflect much on his religious past or his progressive loss of humanity. He is preoccupied entirely by his desperate quest for survival. Pi is so desperate to survive that he does not really have a grasp on what is going on around him, and he is willing to go to any measure to ensure survival. If he is oblivious to most of what's going on around him, he is also oblivious to the fact that he has gone crazy. His madness would lead him to make up stories that would give him more motivation to survive. In this case, he makes up the fact that he has to care for Richard Parker. His responsibilities for Richard Parker are the only things that keep him going and alive. Without an imaginary companion, Pi may not have survived.
Martel sets it up early that madness exists in every creature, and that it is used to adapt to new situations. As he discusses the idea of zoos, Pi says,
All living things contain a measure of madness that moves them in the strange, sometimes inexplicable ways. This madness can be saving. It is part and parcel of the ability to adapt. Without it, no species would survive.
This quotation is used as foreshadowing for the madness that Pi is going to go through. The most important part of this quotation is that the madness can save the creature as it is necessary to adapt to a new environment. As a castaway, Pi definitely had to adapt to a new environment. If madness supposedly goes hand in hand with adaptation, it would make sense that Pi would definitely be mad during his time on the lifeboat. If he is mad right from the start, there is a good chance that he would have made up the animal story to comfort himself.
Martel makes it clear that Pi was mad while he was at sea, giving sense to the fact that he would have made up a character like Richard Parker to keep himself alive.
For our final proof for this argument, throughout the novel, the human-animal relations are very strong and they can be used to prove that Richard Parker the tiger was not on the lifeboat with Pi.
A comparison between animals and humans is made early on, setting the stage for human-animal relations. Pi is explaining his childhood when he says,
Do you know which is the most dangerous animal in the zoo? An arrow pointed to a small curtain. Behind it was a mirror.
This quotation proves how dangerous and wild humans can actually be. This would explain why Pi is so fearful while he's on the boat. He is not fearful of the tiger that's on the boat with him. He's fearful of himself. He realizes that he is going to have to do things that he does not want to do, and this is why he gives his savage side another name. Humans are more harmful than they think they are, and Pi is aware of this because of the sign he was introduced to at an early age. At the beginning of Pi's experience at sea, when he still has some sense of reasoning, he is worried about the things he might do to survive.
Richard Parker's non-existence can be proven by the connection to other novels.
Stevens states that the relationship Pi develops with a tiger should be understood within the context of the invention of companions and other castaway narratives. In many other novels about castaways, the castaway has created an imaginary friend to keep them alive. This is the same thing Pi does, except that he convinces you that he was actually a tiger. It is not until the last few pages where the reader considers that maybe there wasn't really a tiger after all. By comparing Life of Pi with other novels with similar plots, the reader would realize that it would be normal to want to have a friend while cast away at the sea, whether it is imaginary or real.
In this situation, Martel uses a comparison between the way humans and animals eat. It is while Pi is eating on the boat when he says,
It came as an unmistakable indication to me of how low I had sunk the day I noticed, with a pinching of the heart, that I ate like an animal. That this noisy, frantic, unchewing wolfing down of mine was exactly the way Richard Parker ate.
This quotation explains how once humans are taken out of their element, they're just like animals. It signifies how Pi's normal side is being taken over by his savage side. He is now starting to eat like a savage, and he is just slowly drifting away from his civilized ways of life. There was no other animal on the boat. There was only Pi, who was slowly turning into one.
The human-animal relations are made very evident in the novel, and they can help prove that Pi did not live on a lifeboat with a tiger.
And now for our conclusion. Throughout the novel Life of Pi, Martel offers many clues that indicate that Pi was not on the lifeboat with the tiger Richard Parker.
This was proven through the use of strange relationships between Richard Parker and Pi, Pi's madness, and the human-animal relations.
Looking for the clues and finding the research will indicate that Pi was not accompanied by a 450-pound Bengal tiger at sea for 227 days. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back after the commercial.